Have you ever felt powerless over something? Perhaps it was a habit or maybe the way that you react to certain people, or maybe how something is going in an organization you're a member of. We might have felt like, well, okay, so I feel kind of powerless, but if I exert a little bit more willpower on this thing, I can get it done. Like if it's a bad habit, I can make that change in my life. Or maybe if it has to do with the way you react with other people, maybe if I can tell them, that they need to act different, then I can act different. So we think of these ways with willpower that we're going to make this situation change. So we think that that is going to give us more power. And sometimes we even say, well, if I just take this medication, it's going to help me with this little powerless problem that I have. We look outside of ourselves, and I would say that probably most of us do have something within us that we would like to see changed. I mean, after all, what are New Year's resolutions about? And we do those every year, right? So this thing about change, and sometimes the things can be small. It can be something like, I need to smile more. So today I'm going to smile more at everyone I see. Or it could be something that's on a larger scale. Back in 1986, I had a really big change that needed to happen in my life. I needed to get sober and and stop drinking alcohol. So you might not know, but alcoholism is like it's a physical and it's a mental condition. And so because of that particular combination, it's exceedingly difficult to make a change in that area. And especially based on willpower, you're almost always going to fail that way. There's a line in the textbook of Alcoholics Anonymous that says this: lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. So, what it's saying is that it had to be a power greater than willpower, than us just summoning up everything we could just to make something happen. See, when we're talking about willpower, we're talking about using force to have something happen. And every time we use force, we're going against something. Force itself creates a counter force to go against it. So if you're going to quit a bad habit, the habit or the addiction, whatever, that's the counter force, and you're going against it. um, so when we do that, we're actually entrenching ourselves further in separation, because we're saying this is me over here, but then that's the bad thing, and we're creating a sense of two. But in New Thought, we do believe in oneness. We believe that the all is one. We don't want to believe in that sense of separation. So you might say, well, okay, well, how are we going to affect change if we don't use this willpower? After all, isn't the title of the talk The Power Within? Well, yes, it is. And we're going to get into it. In the 1990s, Dr. David Hawkins published a book called Power versus Force. The reading came from that book. And in it, he talks about the difference between power and force. See, power comes from meaning. It comes from the significance of life itself. It ennobles, it uplifts, it is permanent. Whereas force is transient. You might set a goal with force, and then once that goal is that you force yourself into willpower to achieve the goal, then it's like you're left with this kind of emptiness because the force is gone. A lot of times you may lapse back into the habit or even into some kind of depression. I'm sure some of you might have had that experience with something because of the emptiness. Hawkins tells us force is incomplete and therefore has to constantly be fed energy. Power is total and complete in itself and requires nothing from outside of itself. It makes no demands, it has no needs. Because force has an insatiable appetite, it constantly consumes. Power, in contrast, energizes, gives forth, supplies, supports. Power gives life and energy. Force takes it away. So by now, we're all saying, okay, I would rather have power than force in my life. I would rather have that power. So what is it? Well, power is it's still. It's it's like a standing field that does not move. It's like gravity. Gravity doesn't move itself, but things move within it because of it. And that's what power is like. It's based on principle. And it's based on unarguable principles. Things like life is always more important than death. Health is more important than disease. You would rather have trust and faith than you would cynicism and doubt. Those things are unarguable. These principles, they're not concrete things in themselves, but you can see the results of a principle being enacted. So, what we can say about the source of power is that it just is. That sounds like I am that I am, doesn't it? See, true power emanates from consciousness itself, this essence of consciousness itself. You might call it God, but that's where real power comes from. So we're in the thought and we think, okay, yay, we know about consciousness. And we know how consciousness affects our lives. We have the sayings that we have that what you think about, you bring about, or thoughts held in mind produce after their own kind. We understand that consciousness can produce things. And maybe we understand that, but we don't know how. But fortunately, science finally caught up with us. And in the quantum realm, they discovered that this is really because of a vibration that consciousness carries. So, whatever vibration your consciousness is and, and acts as an attractor field to things that are vibrating at that level. For instance, if I vibrate at a level of love, then that's what I'm going to attract in my life. If I vibrate at a level of anger, then I'm going to attract more people that are angry, more things that keep me being angry. It has to do with the level of vibration, and our choices reinforce the formation of these powerful fields. Hawkins calls them the attractor fields. He says everything in the universe constantly gives off an energy pattern of a specific frequency, which remains for all time and can be read by those who know how. Every word, deed, and intention creates a permanent record. Every thought is known and recorded forever. Wow. Everything we've ever thought, intention we've had, it's in this field of consciousness. And it can be accessed by those who know how to do it. See, our thoughts create these attractor fields. And the level of our consciousness, the kind of field that we have determines the level of power that we have in our lives. See, powerful attractor patterns make us go strong, and weak attractor patterns make us go weak. So we're not just talking about an idea, a mental idea. We're actually talking about things that are also physical. See, power is that which makes you go strong. Force is that which makes you go weak. And I mean literally in the body, strong versus weak. So if we have these attractor patterns built on force, then we are weakening our system. And we know that over time, a weak system will degrade. It will become ill, perhaps. It will fall into lower levels. So we want to be in these have an attractor field that is uplifting, that is based in power, not based in force. And all great teachers have really taught us this one thing: give up weak attractors for strong attractors. That's really what they've all said. David Hawkins did some incredible work around this area, around this ability. And in his book, Power versus Force, it explains the testing and the results of his work and how it all came about. But in essence, they calibrated different levels of power and they mapped it all out. They mapped out these different levels of consciousness. And what they discovered, they put it on a scale of 1 to 1,000. And what they discovered was at about the level of 200, underneath that, things were based in force. But above the 200 level, there's power. So the lower ones, probably the lowest one is shame. And that comes in at a calibration of 20. Now we're talking about a scale of 1 to 1,000. Shame is at 20. Then comes guilt, then apathy, fear is 100, then anger and pride, and then you get to 200. Now at 200, something happens, something shifts. Because at 200, the your attractor field begins to admit that other people may be involved, that other people may have needs and wants, and you may begin to care about them. 200 is the level of courage. Now, one thing to note with these levels is that courage at 200 is not just twice what 100 is, which is fear. It's not just twice that powerful. It's exponentially more powerful, like to the power of 10 times more powerful. That means just a little movement up in this scale produces a great change in the level of consciousness. And as an example, one individual at the level of 300, okay, that's moving into the power range. At the level of 300, counterbalances 90,000 individuals below 200. Wow. We can each be influencing that many people, bringing them up in consciousness. One individual at the level of 600, extremely rare to be there, counterbalances 10 million people below the level of 200. So now you see why it's so important for us to maintain a high level of consciousness, for us to reside in the realms, in the attractor patterns where these higher levels of consciousness are. Because we are needed on the planet to lift those that are not even in power yet, that are still operating by force, those that are under 200. So going back to our map, the neutrality is at 250, willingness is higher, and then acceptance is at 350. And acceptance, that carries with it forgiveness. Very important. The level of reason is above that at 400. Now, this is where science and educators may come in. It's intelligence and rationality play in this. And, looking for understanding and for information is important here. And paradoxically, this level is also a major block to transcending to higher levels. Because of its inability, it doesn't have the capacity for the discernment of essence. It uses the mental mind, which is linear, and essence is really a more holistic, it's a more holistic form. So transcending this level of reason is relatively uncommon. But there are those who do, and they rise to the level of 500, and that's the power of love right there at 500. Now, this kind of love is unconditional. It's unchanging, it's permanent. It's a state of being. It's not intellectual. It doesn't come from the mind. This is where the mind switches to the heart. And that's where it comes from. The primary emotion is one of reverence. And interestingly, at this level of 500, though, although most viable religions do calculate, do vibrate at this level, only 0.4% of the world's population ever reaches it. That's a very small number. Now, joy is higher than love at 540, and this is the level of healing and spiritually based self-help groups like Alcoholics Anonymous, etc. And its hallmark is compassion. And then above that, at 600, you have peace, and this is where transcendence and self-realization, God consciousness, come in. It's extremely rare, attained by only 1 in 10 million people. Very rare. And with today's population of 8.2 billion, that means that there are only on the planet maybe 820 people that are vibrating at that level of peace. Now, sometimes great artists have created great works of art or music or architecture that vibrate in that 600th level. And when we see them, we're inspired. They're timeless. They can lift our level of consciousness. Then above 600s, from 700s to 1,000, the highest level, these are the great ones. These are the ones they've actually originated, started the spiritual patterns which multitudes have followed for ages. And they set in place the attractor energy fields which influence all of mankind. Extremely, extremely rare, these people. So how does all of this relate to us? If we're lacking power, we can, by raising our level of consciousness, we can increase the amount of power that we're able to use. We'll gain the power that we need. And so we might say, okay, well, I'm just gonna hop from like 350 to 450 or 500. I'm just gonna hop up there. But Hawkins tells us that in a person's lifetime, it's rare that they move up the scale more than 5 points. Just 5. If you consider all of humanity, 85% are still vibrating below the level of 200. They're still trying to use force to get what they think they need. And it was only in the 1980s that humanity as a whole go from 190 up to 204. So that had to mean that there were people at these higher ranges that were pulling up those that are in the lower fields, the lower attractor fields. So when we look at that and just the sheer numbers of it, it seems like an almost impossible task for us, but not to worry, right? Because we're in new thought and we know about consciousness and we know that there is only one. And we know that all of these levels exist in the band of human consciousness. They're all there. We don't have to go create them. We don't have to go make them. We don't have to have them glom onto us somehow. They're there for us. It's a matter of releasing that which is of a lower attractor field and bringing our awareness, our thoughts, our intentions up into those higher levels. So I brought some tools with me today to do that. And of course, I have an acronym to go with it. And the acronym is FAB, like fabulous, darling. So FAB. These are our tools to help us raise our consciousness. The F stands for forgive. Forgive everything that is witnessed and experienced, no matter what. Everything. Forgive it. You might remember that forgiveness alone starts at 350. So that's above the 200 mark, ways above the 200 mark. So, and all great teachers have taught this. So for this tool, we begin the discipline to act with constant and universal forgiveness and gentleness without exception. Without exception. That means we have compassion for all. It means we act out of kindness with this gentleness. And yes, I'm including you in that too, because judgment is below the level of 200. Judgment makes us feel more badly about ourselves. And so, in order for us to lift our consciousness, we can't be judging ourselves, which brings us down in consciousness. So forgive. Forgive everyone and everything, no exceptions, including yourself. By moment, if it need be. Forgive yourself. Hold yourself in that gentleness, in that kindness. Be kind to yourself as well as others. Forgive everything. That's the F. Now, the A in FAB stands for ask for the meaning to be revealed. Now, for this one, we go to that place where we say, okay, well, I can reason most things out. I pretty much know what things are, but this is asking us to recognize that there are higher levels of consciousness above where we are, where more meaning can be revealed in a different way than we're interpreting things. This is true for all of us. So Hawkins says it in this way: presume no actual reliable knowledge of anything at all. Wow. See, if we want to jump from that level of reason to love, we've got to let loose of the mind and allow the higher essence to be revealed to us. Not to think it through, but to have it be revealed to us in a more holistic way. So this means surrendering to presence, to that higher essence, to surrendering our thoughts, our ideas, our stories, the things we make up, the things we believe. When we do this, the mind will gradually become more and more silent as we rely on having things revealed. Have this meaning revealed to me. See, this is essential if we're going to be able to rise above the level of the 400s. It's really pretty unusual to do so because most people can't let go of the mind. But when we ask for the meaning to be revealed, we're allowing ourselves to step into the heart. So A, ask. Now the B in FAB stands for beauty. See the hidden beauty in all things. In all things. This means holding things with a certain amount of reverence. We've already heard that some of the most timeless art, music, architecture, that those things can dwell in that 600 level. And so every time we can, we want to be able to pop up in there, even temporarily, if we can gaze upon a beautiful piece of art, experience a beautiful piece of music, it can lift us up into that level, even temporarily. And every experience that we have like that can increase the level of consciousness that we have. It gives us more experience being there. It can raise our overall level of consciousness. So surround yourself with things of beauty. It's a beautiful thing to have beautiful things in your home where you live, to be able to listen to magnificent pieces of music, to see art that just truly moves you. Beauty. See beauty. Even where you can't see it, where you don't think you see it, know that there's hidden beauty in those things. That will at least keep us in that place of reverence of all that we gaze upon. See the hidden beauty. That's the B. So, Fab, forgive. We act with that constant and universal forgiveness and gentleness without exception. A, ask for the meaning to be revealed. Don't presume knowledge of anything. The B is beauty. See the hidden beauty and hold all things with that reverence. This may sound like a pretty difficult task to do, and at the beginning it may be, but the more often we do this, the more in our daily lives we can incorporate these things, the more that we can raise our consciousness, lift it up, the easier it becomes and the more ripe we become to be able to actually transcend to a new level. And with this new level, of course, we're increasing the amount of power within that we can access. So let's just go into our treatment. As we close our eyes, if that's comfortable, we may begin to breathe deeply in the belly and we realize, oh, that belly breath, that's a source of power. It's not force. It is actually moving the presence of love in and through our bodies. That's a good thing to do, breathing in the belly. We recognize that this one presence is everywhere present. It is all things. It is who and what the universe is made of. It's who and what we're made of. And therefore, everything within it is accessible to us. Not only accessible, we're made of it, so it's within us. We are that essence of light. We are that essence of love. We are that essence of peace. And so in this moment, I speak my word for each of us that something falls away. There's something that would pull us down. Something that vibrates at that lower level is released. It's released to allow an upward movement in consciousness. That as we go through our day, we stand on the principles of life, of truth, of goodness, of grace. We stand on those principles. We bring them more solidly into our awareness, into our intentions, into what we see. And therefore, as we do this, we increase the amount of power that we have. See, we don't have to cry outside of ourselves, give me power, or something else. You're powerful, do it for me. Oh no, it's an inside job. This power is already within. We simply do the practices to access it. And so where there's might be a commitment involved, we anchor that commitment. Where there might be a little bit more understanding involved, we anchor that. We bring forth the love that can propel us into the practices that actually will raise us up and raise others up. This is our calling. This is what we're here to do. And so knowing that each and every one of us uplifts not only ourselves, but many thousands of others, I stand in such gratitude knowing that this is so, and I release it into that beautiful law that says, yes, it is. And so it is. Amen. And as we go out from this beautiful place of community, as we go into our respective areas, we realize that we are bringing the light. We are bringing the light that comes from the power within.